Georgia's Kirby Smart is on the recruiting trail today, and he is visiting five-star Elijah Griffin. He's the top player in the state of Georgia for 2025 and the top-rated defensive lineman in America. This is all happening just as Georgia predictions have been rolling in on the recruiting prediction machine. So I got a feeling the dogs are about to get hot on the trail. I got On3 Director of Recruiting Chad Simmons with me to talk about who is trending to the dogs early in the offseason. But first, UGA fans, do me a favor. Hit subscribe. We had a great time last year. We're going to have even more fun covering recruiting this year. Hit subscribe for me, please. All right, let's bring on the great Chad Simmons. Here we go, Chad. Trending early for 2025. Now, you have 3 predictions in for top prospects heading to that you think are going to be heading to Georgia. We got Elijah Griffin, Zaden Walker, and Travis Smith. Start at the top there with Elijah Griffin, defensive lineman from Savannah, the #1 defensive lineman in America. And this was a recent pick within the last week. Chad, what is going on with Georgia and Elijah Griffin?
Yeah, Josh, really not a lot has changed there. I feel I've been painting the picture for really over a year that Georgia's been the team at the top of that list for Elijah Griffin. He's a big-time prospect, big-time target for Georgia and many other national programs across the country. He's been to Georgia, 10 plus times. Georgia offered him before he ever even started high school down in the southeastern part of the state, and they identified him early and have really been on him as much as they can since that time for now 2.5, 3 years. So they have that relationship in place. He was back on campus this past weekend in Athens and brought his grandma, had his sister with him. His entire family and support group was there. And the buzz coming out of that visit was really at an all-time high. And that kind of led me to go ahead and put my pick in for the University of Georgia. Now, do I think a decision comes here this week, next week, or even this month? Probably not, based on what I'm hearing. But recruiting obviously is very fluid and things change. But right now I see Georgia will be very tough to beat whenever he makes that decision.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if your pick, the timing of it had anything to do with the decision timeline, but you just put it in because he was riding high off that visit.
Yeah, I don't think the decision is really imminent. I do think at one time he was looking to make a decision, maybe even December of this year, the early signing period. But I think now that's been pushed up and likely happening spring, summer. Could things go sooner? Sure, things happen, but I do not think a decision happens anytime too soon based on what I'm hearing right now. I just like Georgia and where they sit today. And I think whenever he decides, they'll be very tough to beat.
All right. The next prospect we're talking about is linebacker Zaden Walker, another 5-star, the #1 linebacker in America, the #9 player overall. And this pick goes way back for you, Chad. Zaden Walker, you put a pick in a while ago for Georgia. How you feeling there, and who is Georgia's top competition when it comes to Walker?
Yeah, feeling no different, Josh. I think if I remember correctly, I put that pick in maybe after he visited Athens for the South Carolina game back in the fall.
Right.
And again, like Elijah, he's an in-state kid that Georgia offered. He was in 9th grade at Schley County. South Georgia guy, a guy they've been on for 2+ years. They built their relationship with him, his mother, his family. Everyone close to him. And like Elijah, he was back in Athens this weekend. There's been nothing to change my feelings about where Georgia sits in this race. I think Miami has been probably the biggest, most consistent competition for Georgia, but I think Georgia's lead is pretty substantial in this race. There's other schools out there, South Carolina, he mentioned Florida State and Florida at different times. I think if there's one school, though, that's competition for Georgia, it is Miami, but I like where Georgia sits for the elite linebacker at Schley County.
Georgia doing what they do, starting to stack those #1s. If they could get Elijah Griffin, the #1 defensive lineman, Zaden Walker, the #1 linebacker, that class starts to look a lot like the one they just signed. Now, to your most recent RPM pick, that's wide receiver Travis Smith, big, tall, 6'4" out of the Atlanta, Georgia area. Now, he's the number 154th best player overall. And why did you put a pick in for him? He is currently trending to Georgia at 93%.
Yeah, I just like where Georgia's at. I think they really did a good job over the weekend with him kind of painting the picture of how he could fit into that scheme. Obviously, he was very interested even before this past weekend. But his relationship with Brian McClendon, spent some time with OC Mike Bobo over the weekend. He had family there with him as well. And this battle has really been, I would say, since like mid-fall, this battle has been between Georgia and the school he's visiting this weekend, Tennessee. I like where Georgia sits right now. I think a decision for Travis likely comes sooner than later in the coming months. I do think he looks to cut his list down here pretty soon. I think you'll see Georgia and Tennessee definitely right there at the top of that list. Then a decision probably sometime right after that cut is made. But I think Georgia in a great spot because of relationships, location, and offensive fit for Travis Smith.
All right, Georgia fans, that's one to keep an eye on. It could pop soon. All right, one. Now, those are the ones that are trending. Now, I'm going to ask you about somebody that's not trending, but he recently decommitted from Alabama, and I'm talking about edge Zion Grady out of Troy, Alabama. He's the number 40th best player overall, so top 50 player. Just reopened his recruitment. What are you hearing there, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the coaching change at Alabama has this 2025 class for Bama kind of in flux right now. Obviously, some unknown, coaches coming in from the West Coast, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. And I think Zion just wants to kind of take a step back, see what happens with that staff under Kalen DeBoer, what kind of scheme they run defensively, what his potential fit is in the new scheme there, and just see how he feels with the people that will now be running the program in Tuscaloosa. When he committed to Alabama, Georgia was a very big threat to the Crimson Tide and very much in this race as well. He's supposed to be back in Athens in February, on February 3rd. He's been there numerous times. He does like the scheme that Georgia runs, being that odd man front. He can be a stand-up edge guy in their defensive scheme. He has a relationship with Glenn Schumann, the linebackers coach as well. So he was at Auburn this past weekend, visiting schools like Florida State, maybe back to Alabama at some point in the coming weeks as well. But Georgia is very much in this race again as well.
All right. Well, Zion Grady not currently trending to Georgia, but he could be soon like all the others. Chad Simmons, thanks for dropping by the Inside Scoop. Talk a little Georgia recruiting with us.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed that content, be sure to subscribe to the On3 Recruits channel. We have a new page dedicated only to recruiting. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now.